According to the United States Energy Information Administration, in 2016, about 85% of the electricity generated by utility-sized power plants in the United States was done through the burning of natural gas and coal or the use of nuclear energy. Unfortunately, the first two methods produce high amounts of carbon dioxide, a known cause of global warming, as well as other pollutants. While nuclear power plants contribute nearly nothing to global warming, they do, however, create many tons of radioactive waste that must be kept contained in specialized storage areas. In a world where it seems like the need for electricity is continually growing, we are still using methods of producing it that seem to be leading to the world's very destruction. Even though some states, like California, have upped their reliance on renewable energy sources, nationwide only about 12% of our electricity is generated by alternative methods such as hydroelectric, wind, and solar that do not contribute to global warming. Wouldn't it be great if we could come up with a new, non-polluting way to create substantially more electricity to add to this total? Nicer still, what if this new way to create electricity would cost about the same to produce as other green forms of electricity generation, or even less, without the need for any additional infrastructure that typically create their own issues of habitat destruction, or the expense of building more dams? And while we are at it, how about if it could also create energy even when the sun wasn't shining, the wind wasn't blowing, and the lake was dry? You might be surprised to find out that there is such a method, using compressed air. Yes, compressed air. An ordinary diesel electrical generator set, like this one, can be easily converted to run on compressed air only, and the residue left over from this air expansion process is plain air. The same air that goes into the generators comes out the other end. No extra hydrocarbons, no acid rain, no radioactivity. Compressed air can be stored for long lengths of time without degenerating. So, if you make more than you need for on-demand use, you can store it up for later until you do need it. And unlike oil and natural gas, compressed air will not catch fire or explode if it should escape from its storage tanks and pipelines. So, if you can figure out a way to compress air efficiently, day in and day out, no matter what the weather, you have then most likely discovered a way to generate electricity that is much cleaner, safer, and reliable than most of our other options. The U.S. Department of Technology praises compressed air as being clean, readily available, and simple to use, while at the same time it acknowledges it as being the most expensive form of energy on the planet. Until now, our team has come up with a way to create compressed air using railroads that multitask so that they can also power cities and towns at about the same cost as existing methods of generating electricity with none of the drawbacks. Moreover, 90% of the infrastructure we need is already in place all over the country and much of the civilized world. And railroads are remarkably reliable. When trains are delayed, it means money is lost, so railroad companies are very diligent in making sure that railroad traffic, especially freight traffic, gets where it needs to go, when it needs to be there, regardless of the weather or time of day. Our new technology uses small air compression units about the size of a coffee cup spaced about 1 foot apart along both sides of the railroad track. These air compression units will take advantage of the immense forces that are created when a train weighing 10,000 tons is moving at cruising speeds down the railroad tracks. As the train passes over the air compression units, the wheels of the train press down on the tops of the units, forcing the air out and into pipelines that are attached to the insides of the track rails and out of harm's way. The pipelines have special valves that keep the air flowing in one direction before being deposited into multiple large storage tanks that are buried in the ground alongside the tracks. Pressure builds up in the storage tanks until it reaches the amount needed to begin feeding the compressed air to a bank of pneumatic electrical generator sets. These generator sets can be housed in a building about 2/3 the size of a high school football field. We calculate that a 10-mile segment of railroad that has 12 average-sized freight trains passing over it every day could create enough compressed air to generate the same amount of electricity as an 850-megawatt power plant burning coal or natural gas, for less money, with a smaller infrastructure requirement, and with a greatly reduced amount of pollutants being released into the air we all breathe. An 850-megawatt power plant can produce enough electricity to power nearly 650,000 homes. At the national average of 2.6 people per home, that's over 1.5 million people. In the United States, we have about 230,000 miles of railroad track. If only 1% of these tracks were utilized for generating electricity by this means, we could create an additional 230 electrical power plants, each capable of generating 850 megawatts of clean energy. The potential is there, using just 1% of our nation's railroad tracks to generate 1.7 trillion additional megawatt hours of clean electricity. This is equal to the output of all the power plants currently burning coal. So instead of only producing just 12% of our nation's electricity needs via green methods, we could now produce 42%. But that's way down the tracks. Right now, we are just interested in getting the system up and running so we can see how reality matches up with theory. At this point, you might be wondering how this can be done without adding to the amount of diesel fuel that the train is burning. The reason why our method of creating compressed air can be done so effectively when many other methods for producing it have failed because of their extreme cost or relatively small economy of scale is because most of the energy that we will be drawing upon comes from getting the train up to its cruising speed. This is energy that has already been paid for by the goods being shipped along the rail line. By the time the train comes to our compressed air generation system, it is getting around 470 miles per gallon of diesel fuel for every ton of freight it is carrying. Our calculations show that because of the enormous momentum being carried along by the train, the extra burden of passing over our air compression units would only cause the burning of 2% more fuel during the time the train was doing the extra work. Since we will be taking our energy during a time when the train is traveling at cruising speeds and burning the least amount of fuel, we will only cause each train to burn an additional 4 gallons of fuel while it is traveling the 10 miles. On a daily basis of 12 trains per day, this would mean an extra 48 gallons of fuel to create 850 megawatts of power. Of course, there are other costs associated with the creation of each railroad cogeneration power plant. But even after factoring in the cost of purchasing and installing the needed infrastructure, it is our estimate that the electricity could be generated for under 4 cents per kilowatt hour. Throughout the United States, the retail price of a single kilowatt hour of electricity averages at about 12 cents per kilowatt hour. If we can sell our railroad cogenerated electricity to the power grid for 10 cents per kilowatt hour, we stand to make a profit of around 6 cents per kilowatt hour. An 850 megawatt power plant can generate over 20 million kilowatt hours of electricity in a 24-hour period, but normally can expect to only sell about 80% of that capacity due to federal electricity reserve requirements and the fact that on any particular day, a certain percentage of the equipment will be offline for normal maintenance or repair. 80% of 20 million kilowatt hours is 16 million kilowatt hours. If we sold that amount of electricity to the power grid for 10 cents per kilowatt hour, the power station could generate a profit stream of $960,000 per day, or more than $350 million per year. Since a power plant that runs on compressed air can boast a minimal carbon impact while producing power at highly competitive prices, it is extremely likely that during times when electricity demand was lower, our electricity would still be purchased, while that from coal and natural gas plants would be curtailed. So, railroad cogeneration shows promise to be not only a non-polluting alternative, but also a highly profitable one as well. The railroad-powered cogeneration system is now recruiting additional team members, such as joint venture partner members who see a role they can play in our project. Sponsorships and investment interest inquiries are also welcome. If what we have shown here excites you about the potential of this new form of energy production to increase our nation's ability to slow the process of global warming, while at the same time it adds to your bottom line, please contact us at the address shown. Thank you for your time and consideration.